Global travel, it's one of the most lucrative industries on the planet, and it's big business in Latin America. I'm Elaine Reyes, and this is a special tourism edition of America's Now. First up, Cuba is back on the map for American tourists. How ready is the island to host the biggest wave of visitors in over 50 years?
Completely exceeding our expectations that the host has gone out of their way to find all of these great food, which is not always easy to do.
As the number of visitors
Correspondent Michael Voss reports on how tourism is not only good news, but also a huge challenge for a changing Cuba. Then, from vintage cars to rare jewels, Brazil is one of the continent's key luxury markets. We are on Oscar Freire in Sao Paulo, the most luxurious shopping thoroughfare in Latin America, complete with sophisticated style and tantalizing temptations. We'll take you to some of the nation's top shops, and we'll visit some hotspots. And later, it's a beautiful beach paradise on the Yucatan Peninsula that's so hot, it's cool, and it's drawing travelers in droves.
We were just looking for something nearby, and I think that this just stood out to us as a place that could be different and more of an adventure.
Correspondent Jerry Haddon visits the Tony beach town of Tulum to take a look at the effects of tourism on the terrain. Welcome to the special travel edition of America's Now. The word tourism conjures up pleasant thoughts of vacation and leisure, but it's also a critical component in maintaining a nation's financial health. According to the UN's World Tourism Organization, the travel industry generates as much revenue to a country's economy as exports of goods. In some cases, it generates even more. One country that is banking on tourism to increase is Cuba. The industry earns the nation almost $2 billion a year in foreign currency. And with renewed relations with the United States increasing its number of tourists, Cuba is trying to attract a broader range of visitors, especially those interested in ecotourism. Our correspondent Michael Voss has more from Havana.
The narrow, cobbled streets of colonial old Havana have never been busier. Americans still can't come here as tourists, but Washington has eased travel restrictions, and the rush is on to experience this time warp of an island before it changes. As part of his historic visit to Cuba, US President Barack Obama further eased travel restrictions, allowing individuals to book flights here rather than come on expensive guided tours.
It's about time. And I think that it heals a lot of wounds, and I hope it will heal it for both countries, because I'd like to continue to come here.
I love Cuba. If you're thinking about coming, come. It's amazing. You're going to love it. The dancing, the people, cigars, rum. It's beautiful.
Cuba's infrastructure, though, is struggling. Hotels in Havana have doubled their prices and are still full. Even the colourfully dressed women who pose for pictures have increased their prices. It's proved a financial boost for Cuba's fledgling private sector. New restaurants are opening all the time, while homeowners are now renting rooms through online sites like Airbnb. And with US airlines due to start scheduled flights to Cuba later this year, numbers are expected to grow. The more Americans who come here, the more who want to get out of the capital, Havana, to see what the rest of Cuba is like. One popular destination is a valley called Vinales. Valley of Vinales in Pinar del Rio province lies about 170 kilometers from Havana. This UNESCO World Heritage Site, with its distinctive rocky outcrops, is Cuba's top rural tourist destination, attracting busloads of day trippers from the capital and the beach resorts. This band is performing at a 300-seat country restaurant, which is packed almost every day. Amongst the visitors, a school party from New York, including high school student Joel Garcia.
How do you feel you're being treated as an American in Cuba?
I mean, I feel that, the people are very nice to us, especially because we're a school, and we've come to learn how they live and their cultural point of views and everything, how, their way of life. So I think they appreciate how other people want to know how they live their everyday lives.
Teacher Mary Maisano is one of the trip's organizers.
I think Cuba's on the edge of a change. And I think in a few years, this won't be the same Cuba. So we wanted to see it.
It's still looking pretty busy now.
A lot of people I guess we're a little isolated coming from New York, but Cuba's been open to the rest of the world for a long time.
Along with the day trippers, many more tourists come to stay for a few days for the outdoor pursuits. There may be thousands of tourists, but the valley covers more than 100 square kilometers, offering plenty of space to leave the crowds behind.
This is a fertile valley, and one of the principal crops is tobacco. It's been grown here for more than 100 years, and it's one of the things that attracts tourists to the valley.
Moises Suarez has been working in the tobacco field since he was 8 years old. Little has changed in that time. The harvesting is still done by hand. These days, conditions have improved, he told me, and having so many visitors to the valley also helps. Once harvested, the cigar tobacco is taken to drying sheds. There, the leaves will hang until they're naturally dry. The province of Pinar del Rio is known as the premium tobacco-growing region of Cuba. This farm has been in the Hernandez family since the 1880s. It was small enough not to be nationalized after the revolution, though Eduardo Hernandez's only customer is the state.
Nosotros le vendemos el 90% del tabaco. En mi caso no vendemos el 90%. Vendemos un 95, un 96%, es demasiado tabaco, solo para el consumo de la familia y para mostrarle al turista cuando llega a la finca.
And these days there's no shortage of tourists. The Hernandez family has become a cigar tobacco reference center in Vinales Valley, which many of the tour operators include in their itinerary. As well as tours of the farm, there are demonstrations on how to hand-roll a cigar.
Hace unos 5 años comenzó a visitar el turismo porque nosotros sembrábamos mucho tabaco y fue una finca que le llamaron la finca de referencia para que visitara el turismo y le diéramos una explicación cómo funciona una finca, una cooperativa. Ojalá que entre mucho turismo al país, que es muy bueno no solo para el campesino, para el desarrollo del país.
In the heart of the valley sits the town of Vinales, a population of some 8,000 people. 3,000 tourists stay every night, a 13% increase compared to a year ago.
Vinales has long been a popular tourist destination, but as the number of visitors has grown, it's the private sector which has benefited the most. Every one of these restaurants is privately owned.
In 2010, there were no private restaurants. Today, according to the town council, there are more than 70. And the 3 state-run hotels now compete with more than 800 private homes, all offering bed and breakfast. Homeowner Juan Reyes is booked for the next 2 months. Most of his guests come from Europe, but he now plays host to Americans as well. Jessica Shao flew in from San Francisco and wanted to stay in private homes rather than hotels.
It's lovely. I think we want to have more interaction with the local people and want to understand their lives. We didn't come with a lot of expectations, knowing that it's a country that's been embargoed for so long, and completely exceeding our expectations that the host has gone out of their way to find all of these great food, which is not always easy to do.
Running a private bed and breakfast here presents all sorts of challenges. There's only one small bakery in the town and the shops are not well stocked. At times, Juan Reyes has to travel to Havana to find the basics he needs.
Tiendas mayoristas no tenemos todavía. Eso es uno de los problemas más grandes que todavía nos queda. La de conseguir los productos básicos como son el pan, la mantequilla, cerveza, agua, estas cosas que a veces son básicas y faltan. Si no lo hay en Viñales, hay que ir a Pinar del Río, y si no hay que ir a La Habana. Y si no, bueno, pues hay que decir que no hay.
But compared to a few years ago, the state is making it easier for him to operate.
Las cosas ahora están mucho mejor que hace años atrás, porque ahora los impuestos son más bajos, incluso para el pago final del año del fisco ha habido también más flexibilidad.
Some of those taxes are, for the first time, staying in Viñales rather than going to central government in Havana. José Antonio Valles is head of the local authority in Viñales.
Quedan parte de los impuestos para los ingresos fundamentales del territorio, para poder cubrir los gastos fundamentales del territorio, de las unidades presupuestadas, salud pública, la educación, la cultura, el deporte.
Tourism is the lifeblood of Viñales, giving many here the ability to boost their incomes with hard currency. Although some wonder how long the valley can maintain its character and charm as the number of visitors continues to grow.
The importance of tourism has been emphasized by falling oil prices. They have adversely affected Venezuela's aid to Cuba, close to $3.4 billion a year. One other main source of foreign income for Cuba, money sent from Cuban exiles in the U.S., an estimated $3 billion a year.
Coming up.
Some travel insight for first-time visitors to Cuba.
America's Now.
Welcome back to America's Now. Since the United States and Cuba announced they would restore diplomatic ties in 2014, tens of thousands of U.S. citizens have made the trip to the island nation, and many more are on the way. Travel had been suspended between the two countries for 50 years, and there are several things many visitors may not know. Joining me to discuss travel to Cuba is Steve Marshall. He's the CEO of Cuba Ventures Corporation, a company that has been arranging excursions for Canadians and Europeans to Cuba for the past 20 years. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
What have you seen change over the last year and a half? And who's going to Cuba right now? Are they young people? Are they business people? What is the biggest change you've seen?
Well, the major changes are linked to the interest from the United States. Obviously, this is worldwide press now, and we do get a lot of Europeans, Asians, and Canadians saying to us, we want to visit Cuba before it changes. For some reason, that is what people are thinking is going to happen. We're also getting a lot of interest, obviously, from Americans. Our major websites, such as CubanCulture.com, Cubasports.com, is receiving millions of visitors now, and lots of those are from the U.S. We've gone from, in 2014, only about 11% of our visitors on these websites were from the United States, whereas ever since Obama addressed the nation in December 2014, the following 6 months, we saw that increase to 33%. So that's about 10 million extra visitors from the United States.
Describe those visitors. Who are they and where do they come from in the United States?
Basically, it's a broad brush geographic location base. There are a lot of visitors from Florida, a lot from California, and a lot from the East Coast, Washington, New York area. You know, lots of them are also looking for cultural information, specific interests such as Ernest Hemingway's time in Cuba. So, you know, it is pretty broad brush.
What kind of money are we talking about here? Do you think that tourism could become Cuba's biggest industry?
I do. I think that Cuba has a lot of facets to its both its society and the culture that is extremely intriguing to tourists who are visiting the island. First of all, you have the cultural melting pot: Africans, Asians, Spanish, and then we have that whole period where, you know, there was the alliance with Russia. So, you know, there are a lot of blonde Cubans, and so that has brought Cuba a very unique culture. Plus, having been isolated, it makes the place very, very unusual. And this goes well beyond the you know, the 1950s cars, which, you know, everybody wants to take a ride in one of those. You know, you also have these historic ties, such as the Capitol building, you know, which is a copy of the Capitol building here. So it is quite intriguing for tourists, and they tend to fall in love with the country.
Are other countries in the region, other islands in the Caribbean, are they concerned? Do they see Cuba as a country that will take away some of its business?
You know, the Caribbean Hotel Association, I was at a conference recently, and one of the presidents of that organization was basically saying that this could be a serious problem for islands such as the Cayman Islands, the Bahamas, to a certain extent Jamaica and the Dominican Republic, because their main tourist base is essentially the US, okay? And you know, if you know, Cuba has been a destination that has been prohibited for so long. You have the forbidden fruit concept, and you know, what is likely to happen in those first few years when Americans are able to visit Cuba freely? You know, are we going to see a mass exodus to Cuba other than the other Caribbean islands? Because if that's the case, then there could be some serious financial downturns for these islands.
Steve, you mentioned challenges on the ground for first-time travelers to Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to know when it comes to places to stay, renting a car versus hiring a car, a person to drive you, a driver?
Right.
How do you pay for things? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, the services that most people will need in Cuba would be divided into two categories. One is, if you're looking to stay at a hotel, then the hotel reservation system, especially on our websites, is as simple as booking a hotel here in Washington. But if you're looking at the private homes, B&B, they're called Casa Particulares in Cuba, this is a rapidly growing sector, and it's one that is stimulating the private economy. Cuba has made changes very similar to those made by China about 10 years ago. And so that particular type of accommodation is becoming increasingly popular, not only with people from the US, Canada, and Europe, but also from Asia. And then in terms of renting a car, it's a relatively simple endeavor, but I would prompt people who, especially if they're going to Havana, to probably not rent a car. Because, you know, there are all sorts of pitfalls in terms of, you know, when you have an accident in Cuba, you know, sometimes it's, you may have to stay in Cuba until the issue has been resolved, and things like that, quirky things with regard to the law in Cuba. And to be honest, there are so many of these 1950s taxis, and the city is not that large, that it's easier to get around in a taxi. So you know, that would be you know, my advice. And then in terms of excursions, taking people, let's say, to on city tours around, let's say, Havana or one of the 500-year-old cities, you know, like Holguin, or down in Cienfuegos, Trinidad, for example, is a 500-year-old city. You can get excursions either in Havana or in the city that you arrive at, if you're in Varadero, for example, very, very easily from kiosks at the hotel reception.
What about the internet, though? I know that you run websites, but for people who are down there hoping to book things or use the internet, how difficult has that been? Is it getting better? We know that there are some internet cafes, but
right, yeah.
It's not readily available.
No, it's not. Our experience is that almost nobody books anything from Cuba. Most people have their trips well planned, they're booked in advance, and they meticulously organize their trip before they arrive in Cuba. Most consumers are aware that it's going to be tough to get internet in Cuba, and last minute changes to their travel plans are not going to be simple. Okay, so that is what most travelers to Cuba have as a philosophy. Book everything before I arrive. And, there are some openings right now. I mean, we saw President Obama was just down in Cuba. He took with him the executives from Google. And Google are in the process of setting up some Wi-Fi centers in Havana, in Varadero, and some other locations. So I believe that within the next 12 months, you're going to see a serious increase in the available internet in Cuba.
You said you've lived in Cuba for many years. You were there regularly. Yeah. Is Cuba prepared for the onslaught of visitors from the United States? Are they prepared to handle all of these changes?
Well, the infrastructure in Cuba is going to be problematic. It's obvious. There are only 68,000 hotel rooms in Cuba right now. And so we are seeing an uptake with regard to the private homes, the bed and breakfasts, which are covering to a certain extent the shortfall. But it's going to be tough the first few years, obviously. And I believe that there is some synergy between the US and Cuba in terms of this being a slow opening. I don't think that Cuba really wants this to be sort of everybody can travel tomorrow, okay? Because it's just not going to be viable. There just simply isn't enough accommodation in Cuba. Even if you take into consideration the bed and breakfast, it's just not enough. So I see a gradual change in terms of both the rules associated with traveling to Cuba from the US, but also the Cubans themselves. We've been approached at Cuba Ventures by numerous developers who are looking to quickly become involved in building resort complexes in Cuba. So I think that's the major change you will see over the next few years, just a very rapid increase in real estate development and hotel and resort complexes.
Steve Marshall, CEO of Cuba Ventures Corporation, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Coming up.
Luxurious living on some chic streets in Brazil.
Onde a gente pode oferecer produto 100% brasileiro.
Our product is 100% Brazilian and we are proud of that.
America's Now.
Welcome back to our special travel edition of America's Now. The country of Brazil has been one of Latin America's biggest beneficiaries of global tourism in recent years. Brazil was the host nation of the 2014 World Cup and the recent 2016 Summer Olympics. We had the chance to travel to a couple of cities in Brazil where those events took place. Sao Paulo, the nation's business capital, and Rio de Janeiro, its playground. Both places are lined with luxury hotels, restaurants, and shops. And as we found out during our visit, shopping is one of their top attractions. Brazil's billionaires are booming. 26 of them call Sao Paulo home. According to Forbes, it's more than any other city in the southern hemisphere and ranked among the top 10 in the world. And this is where the wealthy spend their time and money, in the Jardins neighborhood. Reminiscent of Los Angeles, it could be called the Beverly Hills of Sao Paulo, bursting with swanky shops offering premium products. We are on Oscar Freire in Sao Paulo, the most luxurious shopping thoroughfare in Latin America. Brazil's best designers have showrooms here, and just window shopping alone is a thrill. Items Brazil is famous for, like its fancy footwear, are on display, as well as brands recognized worldwide. Alongside the shops, another Sao Paulo staple, luxury cars. You can't drive around Jardins in just anything. They're a pricey purchase, too.
A car that costs $10,000 in the U.S. is going to cost you here $25,000. So it's 2.5 times the price you paid overseas.
Ricardo Robertoni is the owner of an antique auto dealership called Private Collections.
5 years ago, you could buy, for instance, a Ferrari for $50,000. And now these cars are costing, or the value is around, I would say, $400,000.
4 times more expensive? There are plenty of Brazilians who will happily pay and justify it by parking their money in a car, like a bank account.
It's a kind of fever, because it's an investment. You can take it as a hobby, and you put your money in something that is going to value more and more next year.
There's a lot of new money millionaires in Brazil, but its billionaires come from generations of old, thanks to banking, construction, and food. Rosalie Moreno Porto is a luxury expert.
E por isso é tão interessante São Paulo.
Traditionally in Sao Paulo, an aristocracy existed that came from the coffee plantations. Avenue Paulista at the time didn't have any buildings, but the mansions of coffee barons. Those coffee barons became bankers, and now banks have their home on Avenue Paulista.
It was coffee money that helped build Sao Paulo, and today gourmet coffee houses abound. Charming cafes like Christoph's and Santa Grau attract well-polished Paulistas ready to indulge. Want something more upscale? The country's financial capital has more than 12,000 restaurants to satisfy any appetite, from fine dining to all-you-can-eat meat.
Onde a gente pode oferecer produto 100% brasileiro.
Our product is 100% Brazilian, and we are proud of that.
If it's a delectable dessert you have on your upscale agenda, how about some organic and environmentally friendly champagne truffles, chocolate pearls, or hot chocolate? Patricia Landman is the manager of Chocolate du Jour, which has been tickling taste buds for 27 years.
Essa é uma criação nova da Chocolate du Jour.
This is a new creation from Chocolate du Jour. The goal is to be a chocolate mousse, but with a different presentation. When the hot mango is poured over the chocolate mushroom, it melts. And so you're tasting a mix of cold and warm. It's an experience for all the senses.
And what would be the good life without the high life? Take a look at this. We're at the Sky Bar in Sao Paulo, and its rooftop pool and 360-degree views are considered among the best in the world. The hip, unique hotel is home to the Sky Bar. Brazilians love their botecos or bars. After midnight, this is one of the most happening hangouts in town. By the way, that's a couch on the floor. But if you want to get away, try a weekend jewelry buying trip to Rio. 65% of the world's colored gemstones are extracted from huge deposits in Brazil's terra firma. Select clients can take a look at them in the private buying rooms of H. Stern at Ipanema Beach.
Here, other tourmalines also in special colors because you have this green, very deep green, and different shades, different tonalities.
Alex Delinha is the marketing coordinator for Brazil's biggest jeweler, which has 160 stores in 12 different countries and growing.
Yeah, we have a necklace. This is called the Sunrise necklace, and it's also an entire jewelry line, and it's a dégradé of different orange and yellow tone that reminds the sunset of Ipanema.
And for football fans, there's a bauble designed especially for the 2014 World Cup, modeled after Rio's Maracanã Stadium.
The first ring was designed in the 50s, and the new one follows actually the renovation of the stadium.
An unforgettable token of extravagance when luxury is a way of life.
Rio de Janeiro is the South American city world travelers visit the most. Rio's annual Carnival celebrations draw an estimated 1 million tourists.
Coming up.
Mexico sees tourism boom in Tulum.
With the underground system we have here, that's kind of what connects everything. The biodiversity, the reef, the people, the tourism, is all connected through the water.
America's Now.
Welcome back. Tourist destinations can be like new restaurants. Word gets out, people create a buzz, and soon there are long lines to get in. On Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, you'll find the once sleepy beach village of Tulum. In a decade, it's gone from hammock heaven to the hottest spot in the sun. Business is booming, but some worry it could end up a victim of its own success. America's Now correspondent Jerry Haddon has more.
It's dawn, and Ciro Caché is combing Tulum's beach for empty beer cans. They're the day's first clue to the huge changes underway here.
Tulum está creciendo demasiado. Sí, porque cuando comenzó solo era un pueblito. Y ahora ya es una ciudad.
Staring out to sea, at least, Tulum seems the same tranquil place it's always been. But just follow Caché inland. Once upon a time, well, actually just 10 years ago, there was little development along Tulum's beach road. Just a handful of backpacker campgrounds, your room, a hammock, a tent, maybe a thatched roof hut. The luxury places, you could count them on 3 fingers. But now, Tulum has got that thing. The cool have found it, the cool with a capital C. Like some urban neighborhood or a new cocktail, Tulum is, in a word that makes hoteliers and investors smile, trendy.
My name is Kevin.
My name is Scott. My name is Chris. I live in Miami currently.
I'm from New York City.
New York City. See a lot of people from New York.
I heard about Tulum.
This is my 3rd time.
My roommate.
I am in Tulum right now on a first date.
She had been here before.
Well, a first date that just kind of got a little out of control and wound up in Tulum.
I decided to, on a whim, come down here for my birthday.
It's kind of chic. There's people kind of in the know here.
And best decision ever.
It's almost like I hate to say this, but a tropical Williamsburg.
People in the know arriving from Cancun Airport to the north on a new highway replacing the old 2-laner, past places that look straight out of Vegas. The sounds of nightlife here are no longer birds and insects.
Cuéntame de los cambios que has visto. Cuando llegaste estaba más virgen, más salvaje, más tranquilo.
Pues sí, virgen.
Mira, te lo digo así de fácil. Aquí, en esta parte, así como ves, no existía esto. Era una casa normal, ¿no? Así como de que yo vivía, de hecho, en la casa de al lado, y luego en una palapa allá atrás no había paredes, solamente era un mosquitero. Y ahora pues no encuentras nada de eso, ¿no? Ahorita encuentras una planta de luz del lugar que está trabajando aquí al lado.
There didn't used to be electricity out here at all. The recent boom in hotel building has outstripped what capacity there is. That sense of frontier tourism, of needing candles should the lights go out, is part of Tulum's charm.
We were just looking for something nearby, and I think that this just stood out to us as a place that could be different and more of an adventure than other places.
Or some kind of style, like smaller little like hut-type places, sort of like
more boutique.
Boutique, but for how much longer?
I saw a wedding the other day on the beach. We're right now in the middle of turtle season, and they had a beam light to the water and loud music. Some years ago, that was just unheard of. Everybody was so protective of the beach, and you couldn't have light or loud noises on turtle season.
When does the jungle become too cool? In fact, the cool coast, stretching from Tulum north to Akumal, wouldn't even have arisen had it not been for a couple of sisters who visited in 2005. Wilma, then Emily. The Category 5 hurricanes dumped and blew, and dumped and blew, laying waste to the little stick huts along the coast.
There's like 10 of us in town during Wilma, and we were just walking around, just watching one thing after another, just getting wiped out. And that was Thursday night, and then we were holed up all day Friday, all day Saturday. Sunday, we kind of was able to get out, but not really. And then we showed up here, and then we opened on Monday. Everything oceanfront was destroyed.
Do you worry that your little oasis here could be disturbed?
Oh, definitely. It already has been. The problem what you have here is it's easier to pay for forgiveness than to ask permission. Like, perfect example is what's going on right here with the Secrets Hotel. You know, we have a 400-bedroom hotel. They've resold a bunch of the mangroves and Luna Glaxus were behind us here that was all never supposed to be sold. We've just been sold, and they're talking about developing it.
A coastline wiped clean by storm became a chance not to just rebuild what there was, but to do it even bigger. The new hotel sits right on Akumal's Turtle Beach. The tourism here keeps local tour guide Melchior Gamboa busy, but also up at night, worrying.
Oye, pero esto es macizo. Hace 10 años no había tanta gente aquí mirando.
Sí, hace 10 años no había tanta gente. Acá en un día bueno, soleado, vacaciones, hasta 5,000 personas al día.
¿Cómo ves el futuro de la tortuga aquí?
Pues lo veo muy crítico. Si no hay responsabilidad de parte del gobierno, de las asociaciones, de las dependencias que deben de cuidar esto, se va a perder todo.
Beginning with the turtles themselves, there are roughly 50 of them who feed and spawn here. But how long would you hang around, accosted by daily swarms of overhead snorkelers, big spastic bubble makers who block your sun? As head of an Akumal tourism cooperative, Gamboa worries about the turtles. He and most locals live in the other half of Akumal, across a bridge on the far side of the highway from the beach. Few tourists make it over here. Gamboa says the big hotel owners at the beach want to fence his people out.
Por caminar 40 metros de la carretera a la playa, tendríamos que pagar 300 pesos por persona. Entonces eso es lo que dificulta.
Esto quita el beneficio del negocio.
Exactamente.
The hoteliers say they're the ones trying to protect the turtles by restricting tours. However it may be, revenues from all that tourism don't seem to reach the village here. But local governments say villages like Akumal are growing faster than they can pay for asphalt, new streetlights, and sewers.
¿Sabes cuándo vienen a hacer limpieza, a reparar focos, a limpiar un poquito la avenida? Una semana, 2 semanas antes de cada elección.
Gamboa's hope is to prevent another kind of growth, of an entrenched ring of local poverty around the tourist areas, the kind of misery that encircles Cancun or Acapulco, before it's too late. His idea is simple. Let everybody win. The locals, the big hotels, the tourists, the turtles. If not, everyone could lose. The tourism pressure has reached beyond the beaches to the inland cenotes, the peninsula's unique water holes that dot the region. They are the source of fresh water for animals, from birds to jaguars, and they're a hell of a lot of fun for people too. How can you not jump into these things? The problem is the cenotes are all connected. Beneath the surface flows a single aquifer. Paul Sanchez has dedicated years to raising awareness of this fragile system.
All this water is the same underneath. It's in the same aquifer. So if everyone's jumping in here with suntan lotion on or using it as a restroom, that means those pollutants are getting spread everywhere.
Once again, there aren't enough studies to make definitive statements on that, but you can figure 600 people, 1,000 people a day jumping into here with sweat and suntan lotion, and let's say some may go to the bathroom in the cenote. Then you do have an impact that we haven't measured yet, and it impacts mostly the fish in the cenote, but also the quality of the water. Then that water's not treated for those things. And so this same water, you saw hotels on the other side of the highway, this same water is coming out in the showers, for example, on the other side. All that's sort of mixed. With the underground system we have here, that's kind of what connects everything. The biodiversity, the reef, the people, the tourism, is all connected through the water.
Cenotes are everywhere, on public lands, on private. Sanchez says there's no master plan for their protection, which explains why one is pristine, the other like a theme park.
If we can sit down and talk about management with the authorities, with how it's reviewed, how the place is developed, you could probably protect the cenotes for the wildlife and also have areas where you have tourism, because it's a fantastic place to enjoy clear, fresh water on a hot summer day.
So the idea isn't that people don't get to visit these places,
No.
It's finding a balance.
Exactly.
A balance that ultimately must favor the environment, because when this dirty water reaches the sea, it contributes to this: algae, seagrass. It's food for turtles, but it's also a sign of oxygen-starved waters, of high levels of acidity caused by man-made pollutants. At the big hotels, tractors rake it up and burn it daily, but elsewhere, it's formed a stinky, gunky blockade stretching for miles on end. South of Tulum begins the Sian Khan biosphere, a huge protected reserve of jungle, mangroves, coastline. But pollutants don't obey such designations, observes Jose Suarez, a fisherman in the tiny village of Punta Allen, a 2-hour drive from Tulum.
Este año. Primera vez que tengo vista, ya se siente el olor.
Suarez and his pals are alarmed. They know they can't stop the seaweed or its effects on their small-time tourism, but they might just be able to save what they've lived on for generations: lobsters. These guys do lobsters right. First off, they don't trap them. They offer them shade and shelter under these steel slabs. The lobsters are free to come and go. During the day, they stay put. Catching them is this easy. It's a brilliant idea, at least for these waters. The only occasional problem: dolphins will sometimes flip the traps in search of crunchy snacks. But they're easy to flip back. With the catch on board, Suarez does something relatively new. He throws back the juveniles and the pregnant ones. This despite the growing demand from the new eateries up the coast and overseas.
Ves el oro al fondo del mar y lo dejas, un poco raro. No, este oro crece, el oro de ano crece, se reproduce, sigue la mata dando, como dicen, sigue. Entonces, si nosotros lo cuidamos, más da. Es como regarla.
Suarez, it would seem, is onto something that might help save the entire Yucatan from the nearly irresistible call to cash in on tourism, thinking sustainably. Back in Tulum, sustainable means realizing there's room for both hipster and hippie. At least that's what yoga teacher Loarna tries to impart during her beachside classes at a swank hotel.
Everyone's on the beach and it's just one unifying place.
And it's okay that there are all those things.
Totally.
Rich resorts, backpacker places, cheap restaurants, celebrity chefs.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, it really is. It really is, because these are all the facets of our society. There's no point in saying one's better than the other. It's just where everyone's at and what everyone's exploring.
Luarna teaches at a high-end joint, but lives at a budget campground, like this one, where budget traveler Matt Lesser stays. Lesser's a Reiki healer from Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Show me where paradise is.
This is it.
This is
my
it.
home away from
This
home.
is your REI tent.
And then also, it's great because I can do the leather work right there. So I just sort of sit down and this is my office.
Fantastic. What a far cry from the brick and asphalt of Brooklyn.
Yeah, I found it actually by accident, and we just fell in love with it. And we met all these people at the same place, and they were just these loving people from Canada and all over the world. And we just had this sort of big supper and just felt like I had found my true family. I was closer to those people in that 1 week than I am to my real family.
Lesser fled Williamsburg, he says, because his hood was getting too commercialized. Cool had killed authenticity, only to be sacrificed on the altar of fast food.
I needed to get away from the whole sort of lifestyle, like the crazy energy of New York, so I came here because I wanted sort of a low-key, beautiful, like loving vibe.
Clearly, the same changes are happening here. For some, it may mean time to move on, or a chance to cash in. For others, it's part of the natural cycle of tourism. The pristine is discovered and changes forever.
Mexico's status as a global destination is rising. Since 2013, each year has seen a record-breaking increase in the number of international visitors. According to the Ministry of Tourism, 2015 brought in over 30 million tourists to the country from abroad. Finally, we take you to one of the most popular hills in Bogota, Colombia. It overlooks a beautiful landscape, the perfect spot for watching the sunset. This hilltop is both a tourist site and a symbol for Bogota's religious culture. It can be seen from any part of the city and serves as a reference point for residents. We leave you with a look at the Monserrate mountaintop. Thanks for watching this special tourism edition of America's Now. We'll see you again next week.
Es mi deseo. Puedes sacar. Usted pide el deseo y ellos lo hacen realidad.